Some of you know I'm an emergency room doctor. I am used to being interrupted. So if you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to speak up, put it in the chat box. Caitlin will help me with those questions or raise your hand as well. The first session is titled Taking Your Teaching to the Next Level, Publishing Educational Work. We're hoping that after these 2 days, you'll feel more confident in designing, implementing, and evaluating an educational product and working on it over the next 6 months, 8 months, or a year to submit it for publication consideration to MedEdPORTAL. Over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be covering three primary topics: why it matters to publish, and I'm going to ask you all, what is the benefit and the value of publishing? Secondly, how is MedEdPORTAL different from other journals? And we'll be reviewing that in greater detail. And what are the components of a submission that makes it successful to be accepted and published in MedEdPORTAL? I figured I would just start off with my first experience, or one of my first experiences with publishing in a peer-reviewed journal. This was my first article where I was the first author, and it was titled Cigarette Smoking and Lesbian and Bisexual Women in the Bronx. And this was published almost 20 years ago. I cannot believe it's been 20 years, a long time, in a journal titled Journal of Community Health. Now, the HIV/AIDS epidemic started in the 80s and really had a profound impact on the LGBTQ plus community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. And due to that unfortunate epidemic, what the community did gain was a lot of visibility. So as HIV/AIDS disproportionately impacted individuals who identified as gay and bisexual, more medical, nursing, public health practitioners started to look more closely on what was going on in the community. And although most funding to look at unique health issues and health disparities of this community focused on HIV/AIDS, it did elevate curiosity as to what were the other health issues and health disparities impacting this community. I had the opportunity to work with colleagues to look at cigarette smoking, specifically amongst women who identified as lesbian and bisexual in the Bronx. And for those who don't know, the Bronx is one of the boroughs of New York City. It has some of the poorest congressional districts in the country. And most of the residents in the Bronx are either identify as Black, African American, or Hispanic, Latino. So, this was an incredible experience because it dealt with a lot of intersectionality. Another interesting thing about this article is that most people didn't view lesbian and bisexual women as having families and kids. And so women who smoked also potentially put at risk their kids with asthma and having worsening asthma exacerbations and ending up in the emergency room. So that was one of my first experiences with publishing, which was really profound for me, not only on a professional level, but more on the personal level as I identify as a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Is anyone willing to share one of their first publications and what it's meant to them? So if anyone can share one of their first publications and why it was so meaningful.
I can share. So one of the projects that I feel like when I've been successful with publication, it's been when there's been a medical student helping me get things done. And so we did a project at the University of New Mexico where we were surveying medical students on their interests in becoming bilingual providers and doing an assessment of what resources they would use if provided to become bilingual providers or at least improve the language skills. And then we had students do a self-assessment, like they would self-rate their Spanish language skills and then do a formalized proficiency test. And so the student group got this published. We saw that there were high numbers of med students who wanted to be bilingual and improve their skills. And interestingly, that there was a high level of concordance between medical students' self-rated proficiency and their tested proficiency. And so this was a value to me because development of Spanish language skills and bilingualism in our medical students has been of long-time interest of mine. And I thought it was a really relevant project that kind of got the ball rolling on a lot of other Spanish language projects at UNM. I think most importantly, it's just really satisfying to me to work with a group of students on something they're excited about and passionate about.
Excellent, excellent. Congratulations and thank you, Felicia, for sharing that. Anyone else? Okay, if anyone else decides a little bit later, just let me know. So publishing is not only professionally fulfilling, it allows us to meet our desires of mentoring, advising, bringing forth an understanding of certain cultural elements, which can be language concordance or bilingual identity. I'm just going to share this. And really, as we talk about education or publishing, education underlies and teaching everything that we do in healthcare, whether it's in the classroom, a public health classroom, or in a medical classroom. When we mentor people, we're teaching them to some extent. We're trying to lead in innovations within the healthcare system. We're teaching our colleagues of how to do things differently. Even when we communicate within a team dynamic, we're teaching each other how to do it differently. Typically, when we think about studies, there's a lot of different study types that you could potentially write up and publish in a variety of journals. But even beyond study types, editorials or letters, and we're going to go into it in a little bit greater detail in a couple of slides later, can be published in a peer-reviewed journal, case reports, cross-sectional studies, case control, cohort studies, not so much randomized controlled trials or systematic reviews, but all of these other research types you can publish educational activities in. We typically are most familiar with the biomedical paradigm of coming up with a hypothesis, doing some data collection or investigation after you've created a research design, and then using that to show evidence to write usually a heavy data-driven paper. But in medical education, there's a similar paradigm of coming up with an idea, which we discussed. What are you interested in writing about and publishing in MedEdPORTAL? Doing a bit of experimentation, which I was referring to as implementation, doing a 60-minute workshop at maybe your home institution, and then also doing it at an institution at another school across the country or with different learners. And then thinking about how that product could be scaled up or if it's generalizable for learners across the country. So if you teach a group of learners in New Mexico, is what you're teaching going to be applicable and meaningful for learners, medical students, or residents in New York or Puerto Rico or California, right? Thinking about how to frame that content so it's generalizable and it could be scaled up for students in the 220 medical schools across the country. Teaching is a legitimate domain for publishing and completing scholarship. And often we forget that. In our culture, within our medical schools, we often refer to researchers, heavily biomedical researchers or researchers engaged in clinical research in terms of them publishing. But the bulk of our faculty are educators. I would say in many of our schools, somewhere between 70 to 80%. And the day-to-day teaching that educators do, and our medical students and residents and fellows are also educators, can contribute to educational scholarship and can be published. So everything that you're teaching on a day-to-day basis, if you nuance it a certain way, can be published in MedEdPORTAL. Just like our basic science researchers, when they're pipetting and doing cultures in their lab and working towards that publication, when you're in that classroom setting, teaching people or even the hospital teaching patients, you can fashion it for it to be a publication. We often know what good teaching is. We do good teaching to promote learning. And we know what it's like when we convey a certain point to our medical students and residents and they receive it in a receptive manner. They might raise their eyebrow, they might smile, they might repeat it back, right? So we have a good understanding of what good teaching is. We also know what scholarly teaching is. Often we pull in articles to the classroom setting when we're giving presentations, we'll put references. When we're talking about a complex case on rounds, we might share a publication we found on PubMed. What we're not great at is about the scholarship of teaching and learning and generating our own scholarship. And in generating our own scholarship, there's two things in particular that I want you to keep in mind. One, whenever you try to contribute something to the literature, when you try to submit something to MedEdPORTAL or another journal, you always have to think about, how is this filling a gap? What already exists? How am I adding to the literature, right? So it's not about finding one article, it's about doing a literature search and seeing how you are uniquely creating something new and different to fill a gap in the literature. The second thing is that you have to be ready for public criticism. MedEdPORTAL, like other journals, are peer-reviewed, which means that a group of experts are going to look over and review your work and give you an evaluation of its quality. And if it meets a certain quality threshold, you'll get a certain number of reviews, you'll accept and incorporate those reviews, and then you'll engage in a stepward process of editing your product and eventually be accepted, right? But in order to achieve the scholarship of teaching and learning, one, you got to fill a gap in the literature, and two, it has to go through public critique or critique by experts. So what can you publish in medical education? Well, all the studies that I was mentioning, you can do these studies to evaluate your teaching and learner assessment activities and eventually getting into a journal. Now, before we go into MedEdPORTAL, I just want to give you a greater of appreciation of the landscape of different journals that exist out there and different publication types. As I mentioned, there's hundreds of journals out there, and many of those journals focus on medical education research, academic medicine, teaching and learning in medicine, the American Journal, and MedEdPORTAL. When you look at these journals, if you could just mute yourself, someone might have to. Okay, great, thank you. So every journal has a list of article types. What do I mean by an article type? Well, academic medicine, which is a sibling journal of MedEdPORTAL. What I mean by that, the Association of American Medical Colleges sponsors the AAMC two journals, MedEdPORTAL and Academic Medicine. Academic Medicine is a more traditional journal, but if you look at their article types, you could submit a perspective or an editorial. An editorial is a commentary on something that's already been published in the journal. What makes an editorial unique is it's typically only 400 words. Let me ask you, how many words make up a single-spaced one-page Word document? How many words can you actually fit on a one-page single-spaced document? Anyone? Any guesses?
500?
1,500? I don't know.
Somewhere about 400, 500. So when you do an editorial, think about it. It's only one page. All of us can probably write one page. The challenge with writing a good editorial is limiting yourself to one page. It doesn't require data. It doesn't require IRB approval, which we're going to go through later on. Perspectives is another type of article type that you can find in journals. Perspectives are typically a little bit longer, 1,000 words max or 1,250. And it could be just your perspective on what it's like being a physician or surviving the COVID epidemic as a ICU physician or ICU nurse, right? It's your perspective, your lived experience, and writing it up in a perspective piece, or maybe what's going on in your community. Journals also create a space for best practices or better practices. And I sort of alluded to this, that every journal has their own article types. The Journal of Graduate Medical Education has a new ideas article type that has a max of 600 words. Medical education has a different article type that's in the same genre of really good stuff. Once again, 500 words. And sometimes they limit you to the number of references you could put. Clinical teaching has an insights article type, and then academic medicine has a brief research report. So really important to one, realize each of these journals have their own article types. As you can see here, there's some similarities, but they have different word counts. And if you don't stay within that word count, they will reject you, right? So you have to follow the guidelines that journals have put out there to be successful. Another type is an innovation report. When I think about academic medicine and their innovation report, an innovation report doesn't necessarily have to have a lot of data. It could be data based on 1 year, or it could just be a new framework. It typically focuses on early stage work, and it's really more about novelty than a long-standing evaluation. As educators, we're always innovating. We're always coming up with new activities to do for our learners, or in our department, or for GME, or for UME, right? So this is something that all of you are probably involved in on a day-to-day basis. Some examples of innovation reports are coached peer review, developing the next generation of authors, using a simulation of a frustrated faculty member during departmental chair searches, a proof of concept project. So I know this article brings a smile to some of your faces, because I know some of you have been involved in chair searches, and sometimes it could be a little bit frustrating, right? So, one, this is an example of how you can take that frustration and get a publication out of it, or prevent frustration from happening in another situation. You'll notice that you'll come across a lot of articles on best practices that have 5 tips, 6 tips, or in a comical way, we found 3 articles that focus on 12 tips. I don't know why exactly 12 tips, but it just seems like a popular number to focus on. So 12 tips for enhancing student engagement, 12 tips for teaching the informed consent conversation, 12 tips for incorporating teaching sexual and gender minority health medical school curriculum. The only thing I could think of when I think about 12 is 12 months a year. And maybe within these articles, they talk about what you could do each month of the year. But you'll see there'll be common strategies and approaches to coming up with convincing titles of articles. Patient narratives can also be published. The Lancet has a patient narratives article type that you could consider. Academic medicine, and just for full disclosure, I used to be on the editorial board for academic medicine. They have this really great article type called last page. So just from what you see on the screen here, what do you think makes the last page unique that you typically don't see in traditional articles? What are you seeing in front of you that is atypical of most article types?
It's a visual representation.
Excellent. Absolutely. So actually the word count for last page is only 400 words. In order to be successful in AM last page, you have to use words and images to convey a best practice or strategy, right? That's a different type of creativity. It's not only words, it's graphics, it's images to convey a point. A great article type, 1 page, 400 words, and you can only have 3 references. So in a nerdy kind of way, what I get really excited, you know what's one of my goals? One of my goals is to have a published article in every article type of academic medicine. So I have an AM last page, I have an original research article, I have a perspective piece. I got to tell you, what I'm most nervous about in actually getting is the cover art of a journal. So every journal has cover art. It could be a painting, it could be a poem. And this is a peer-reviewed publication. So if you're an artist, if you're a poet, if you're a musician, these are all, this can represent another type of article type. This is the one that I think I'm never going to be able to achieve. But for many of you, you might be able to do it, right? Has anyone had a cover art accepted? Anyone on the call today? Anyone have cover art accepted? Poem? Music? No? Okay. So in summary, the landscape of publishing is very diverse. When I was in medical school, I thought you could only publish an article that was 300 words with a lot of data that was collected over 10 years, right? A heavy data-driven paper. But today, the landscape of publishing is much more diverse. Yes, you could still publish that heavy research-intensive article, not only in quantitative, but qualitative data or a mixed methods publication, but all the way on the other side, a letter to the editor is a peer-reviewed publication of 400 words with no data and no IRB approval. And in the middle, there's a lot of different opportunities to publish. And here are some examples of various journal names where you could publish medical education content. Whether it's around patient safety, educational research, simulation, or clinical. So how is MedEdPORTAL different? So based on what I've shared, and some of you already have experience with MedEdPORTAL, can some of you share, how is MedEdPORTAL unique and different than what I shared about these other journals? Some of you, I know, have a lot of experience with MedEdPORTAL. So I will be silent until I get a response.
In the chat, one answer is very specific ESR formatting and content requirements.
Excellent, excellent. That's right. So we're going to review that a submission to MedEdPORTAL has a lot more appendices than an article to a traditional journal. Shwanice? Oh, anyone else? Anyone else want to comment on how MedEdPORTAL is uniquely different and distinct? Wow, I hope I haven't lost people already, but okay. So let's go through a little bit deeper dive into why MedEdPORTAL is unique. Actually, I want you to go to the MedEdPORTAL website. So maybe, Caitlin, if you can type in the link to the MedEdPORTAL website and be ready to pull it up. While Caitlin is doing that, I'll just review 3 characteristics that makes MedEdPORTAL unique. One, it's open access, which means for free, anyone can access it around the world. You could download the materials for free. You could publish for free. And when you try to access one of the articles, you get the article in its entirety. Open access. Not all journals are peer-reviewed. MedEdPORTAL is similar to many other journals where it is peer-reviewed. And the peer reviewers are experts in medical education or the topic in which you're submitting. and they will review the implementation and the evaluation. And it is self-contained. So MedEdPORTAL is about publishing the teaching and learner assessment materials that you have created. So if you do a 1-hour workshop, it's not only the PowerPoint, but if you do any case discussions, if you do any interactive activities, everything that you've developed and used to implement that workshop goes into this package that you submit and is accepted into MedEdPORTAL so other people can download in its entirety, right? And that's also not the case with most other journals. Most of the other journals limit you to 2,500 word article or less, and doesn't really give you the materials that led to the development of that project. So let me know when you're ready, Caitlin. Okay, take over. Let's see.
Okay, let me show. I already knew you were going to ask me, so I had it up already.
Oh, okay. So maybe we could share it. So we want everyone to go to MedEdPORTAL and do this next exercise, www.mededportal.org. If you want to share it, Caitlin. Everyone go. This is going to be a really critical step because one of the things that I get a lot of emails and texts about is how do I download MedEdPORTAL materials? I want to highlight an article published in MedEdPORTAL that received the Editor's Choice Award. Less than 1% of articles published in MedEdPORTAL get the Editor's Choice Award. And this article was developed by Dr. Andrea Garcia. In the search engine, I want everyone to type in Native American and social determinants of health. Native American and social determinants of health. Andrea Garcia was the past president of the Association of Native American Medical Students, and she, oops, yeah, it should come up. Okay. So everyone should have been able to pull up this article titled Social and Structural Determinants of Urban American Indian and Alaska Native Health, a case study in Los Angeles. And as mentioned, the lead author is Dr. Garcia, and I got to work with her on this publication. As you can see, is the title, the co-authors. You can access additional author information. And as you scroll down, all MedEdPORTAL publications must have an abstract, typical of most research articles, with an introduction, methods, results, and discussion. This is limited to 250 words. Unique is you must have a certain number of educational objectives. For a 1-hour workshop, you should not have more than 3 to 4 educational objectives. And we're going to be discussing more how to write an educational objective. These educational objectives kept Bloom's taxonomy in mind when selecting an appropriate verb. As you scroll down, you'll also see that the publication includes an introduction, a method section, a results section, and a discussion section. And MedEdPORTAL asks that your primary article, which is called the Educational Summary Report, be limited to 3,000 words. Scroll down even more. And then, like other peer-reviewed journal articles, and when we download some of the materials, you also have to have references. Okay. So the money button is the download button. I want everyone to try and download this module so we can see what Andrea created. You get some idea of what she created because right above the download button is appendices. And within her package is a PowerPoint presentation. So you already have some understanding of her educational approach, a facilitator guide, which we'll walk through, a video, 2 videos, and an evaluation form. So she's giving you everything that you need for you to have the same success as her in implementing this workshop. So everyone should try and download this material. If you are unable to download the material, please speak up so we can help you out. Some people are not sure where the material gets downloaded into. There should be a download folder on your computer, and it should have been dumped in there. It will be a zip file. You will have to unzip the file. Once you unzip the file, and maybe Caitlin, you can show how it appears on your computer, you should see 5 to 6 documents. Why am I showing you this? For a number of reasons. One, because when you try to figure out how you're filling a gap, it is critical. You must write in your intro what publications already exist in MedEdPORTAL on your topic matter. If you submit an article for publication consideration and you do not write a paragraph on what already exists in MedEdPORTAL, it is a strike because you have not done your due diligence to explain how you're filling a gap. So the first thing, whenever you're writing an article, is you got to do a good lit search. What already exists in MedEdPORTAL, and how is your content unique? So you're going to download any article that's similar to the one that you're proposing and look at what they've created so that you can explain how yours is different. So when you're ready, Caitlin, to share your folder.
It's almost there. It's about 3/4 of the way downloaded.
Because of the 2 videos, it could take a couple of minutes because it's a really big file. If anyone else has their folder that they could share it, that would be great. If anyone else. Wants to share their folder, we could take that approach too. Is anyone, by thumbs up, is everyone able to download this? If people could just put thumbs up or some other expression on their, great. I see Jonathan, thumbs up. Anyone else able to, great. I see Eddie Marie was able to do it. Justin. Okay. So once you unzip the folder, you're going to see a lot of article types. Unique, right? You're getting everything you need to have similar success in implementing it. The educational summary report is basically a PDF of what you already saw on the website of this article. If we click there, and we're going through this because this is giving you an example of what you need to create and submit to MedEdPORTAL. Same material, right? You saw on the webpage. So the ESR and what's on the webpage is pretty much one and the same. If we go to the PowerPoint, so what Andrea did is her workshop was anchored in a PowerPoint presentation. And we're going to show you now the PowerPoint presentation. Yes, I would close this ESR and open the PowerPoint. Okay.
It's going. It's just slow.
No problem.
Hey, JP, if you could do it at some point, can you talk about the videos? Did she make those or where they
Excellent.
came from?
Excellent. We're going to go through that. Excellent question. So we'll show the PowerPoint first.
The other forms too. All right, the PowerPoint's still going, but I also have the pre and post survey. Do you want me to share that while it loads?
Let me, if someone else can share the PowerPoint, because I want to go step by step, just to, can anyone share the PowerPoint on your end? Anyone? I'll try and download it. See if I could just. Actually, I can put in my original PowerPoint presentation here. So in the PowerPoint, what made Andrea's, and maybe we can show the video next, but what made Andrea's module so successful, let's see if I could just show you. So this is, can everyone see this image? This PowerPoint slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so what is captivating about this? This is her opening facilitator slide. What is captivating about this?
I think to see a woman of color is really captivating. And then also to see right in the background where the study takes place with that skyline of Los Angeles. And then I love that her shirt conveys a message too that's really strong and then kind of gives you like a insight into the perspective of the piece.
Excellent. You nailed it. Excellent. Here's another incredible image, right? And so Andrea worked with a photographer and worked with community-based organizations to take these photos, right? So she worked with individuals within her community to create photos that then she included in this workshop. It's actually easier to take your own photos than to use photos on the internet, because on the internet, those photos are owned by somebody. And in order to use the photo in the MedEdPORTAL submission, you need to get that person's permission. So sometimes it's easier and quicker for you to take the photo yourself. She had an interactive activity of storytelling that brought great animation to the publication. In addition, in her module, she talks about policies that have impacted American Indian health over the past 100 years, or more than 100 years, since 1492. Most people are not aware that the majority of American Indians live in urban environments, not on reservations. There's this notion or myth that most American Indians live in reservations, but it's actually in urban environments. She provides demographic information and so on. So maybe if we can, Caitlin, could one of the videos show quickly?
Do you have just either one? I have both of them open.
You can use either one.
This morning, I'd like to recognize the Algonquin Nation on whose traditional territory we are gathering. We acknowledge them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land.
So we're having a little bit of, you might not be able to hear it fully, but going back to your question, Lori, so what Andrea wanted to do was incorporate videos. MedEdPORTAL publications cannot be static. You just can't have PowerPoint slides. You need to have interactive activities or visual activities. So Andrea did storytelling as an interactive activity. She did case discussions as an interactive activity. She worked with community-based organizations to use the videos that they created and incorporated those videos to talk about the unique health issues and health disparities of American Indians. So as you're creating your modules, whether it's on social determinants of health, colorectal cancer, communication skills in Spanish, think about how you can incorporate various media strategies to make it more engaging and interactive. Okay.
I think that's really fantastic. I've done a lot of that work and created my own website. But what I'm curious about next is the IRB process, because I have found that to be interesting too when you start incorporating the narrative, stories, photos, and videos and coordinating that with IRB.
So the IRB should not, in my experience, the IRB should not comment on your educational strategy. In my experience, the IRB recognizes this as an educational activity that happens every day in classroom settings. One way for the IRB to view what you're doing as exempt or expedited is one, anonymous, right? So if you're not collecting unique identifying information, name, email, telephone number, if it's just anonymous, like we're doing the pre and post where you're coming up with a 4-digit number that Caitlin and I don't know, that will have most IRBs view the submission to the IRB as exempt or expedited. Two, you're labeling it as an educational strategy that also is viewed as exempt or expedited. Tying to the question about the IRB, which we're going to have a longer discussion about, we just want to show the pre and post survey that Andrea created. Now, a lot of fellows think they need to do a long pre and post evaluation to have a successful submission to MedEdPORTAL. That is wrong, okay? Absolutely wrong. We're going to review with you what is needed to successfully submit to MedEdPORTAL. The pre-assessment is done at the start of your workshop. It should be anonymous. You could have a couple of questions. As you can see here, Andrea asked, what is a land acknowledgement? Which American Indian tribe identifies the land that this institution resides on in their original homelands? Those are knowledge-based questions. You don't, in all honesty, you don't have to have any knowledge-based questions, but you could do a couple. If you send Caitlin and I a pre-assessment with 10 knowledge-based questions, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to ask you to reduce it to 2 or 3 or get rid of it altogether. It is not necessary to publish in MedEdPORTAL to have knowledge-based questions. You do have to have demographic questions. And the most important demographic question is, who were your learners? MedEdPORTAL requires that at least a quarter of your learners are in the medical education track, meaning medical students, residents, fellows, or faculty, or on the dental track. You must ask educational level. And BINGAP and LMSA typically incorporate race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. Scroll down. And state. State is usually really good to show that it's not only at one institution. As you can see here on the post, so you could compare percent correct responses before and after the workshop. She asked the same questions. Once again, knowledge-based questions are not required. However, you will hear me and Caitlin say, and in all 35 of my publications, the one thing that I include is a confidence scale that is based on your learning objectives. So remember, you must have well-written learning objectives. Do not send Caitlin and I 10 learning objectives, because we're going to send it back to you and we're going to ask you for how many learning objectives. I said this before. Can anyone tell me how many learning objectives did I say limit yourself to for a 1-hour workshop? 3. 2 to 3 will give you 4. You give me 5, you're going to hear me say, give me 3 or 4. I'm not going to budge. Caitlin is not going to budge. And you simply say, to what extent do you agree that this workshop met 3 learning objectives? Or you could rephrase the question as, how much confidence do you have in meeting the learning objectives? This is a requirement. Knowledge-based questions, no. This assessment of your learning objectives, yes, required, pre and post. If you scroll down further, the other requirement, what did you like about this workshop and what would you change? Critical, you have to have it. If you do this, your evaluation is done. Now, do you all believe me? Does anyone want to disagree and discuss it with me right now? I'm open to discussion. But remember, I took this approach and I have 35 publications.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the difference between a pre and post versus a retrospective pre-post. I think whenever I've tried to do 2 separate surveys, like a pre and post independently, I always lose like half of my respondents on the post. And I've had